Hello, thank you for joining me today again on the Church History Trail, and you're very welcome to the channel. And where we are is we're out in the sticks here. We're near PORTADOWN and we're in the area of the birches, and basically what we're doing here is we're on the trail of Stonewall Jackson's ancestor, and you can see the lovely scenery here, absolutely breathtaking. Now there's not much of the wee house left, there's just a wall, but there's a plaque on the wall and it has a very big connection with Stonewall Jackson. And you can see the wee calves there in the field, and they're wondering what I'm doing here. There's the wee calves, as you can see. So I'm going to take you up and let you see this. Now this is on private ground, so if anyone is coming to see this wall that's left of the house, then make sure you ask permission when you get here, because it is on private grounds. Now, Thomas Jonathan Jackson, or who's better known as Stonewall Jackson, was born on the 21st of January 1824, and he died on the 10th of May 1863. And he was a general in the Confederate Army during the American Civil War. Of course, the American Civil War lasted from 1861 to 1865. But he was also a man of strong Christian faith and principles. And military historians actually regard him as one of the most gifted tactical commanders in United States history. And so Jackson was given the nickname Stonewall during the first Battle of Bull Run, called the First Battle of Manassas by the Confederate forces, of course. And it was fought on the 21st of July 1861. Confederate General Bernard B, in trying to rally his own troops, cried, "There stands Jackson like a stone wall. Rally round the Virginians." Of course, he had hardly had the words out of his mouth when he dropped dead. He had been killed, but it did rally his men. And the highly significant role that Jackson played for the Confederacy in this battle earned him promotion to Major General. Now, the Battle of Chancellorsville, it was fought from the 30th of April to the 6th of May 1863, and General Lee sent Jackson and his entire corps on an aggressive flanking manoeuvre to the right of the Union Army. And this flanking manoeuvre has actually went down in history as one of the most successful and dramatic events of the entire war. And the Confederates marched silently until they were merely several hundred feet from the Union lines, and then they released the famous rebel yell, "At full charge." And many of the Federal soldiers were captured without a shot even being fired, and the rest were in full rout. On returning to the camp, however, on that night on the 2nd of May, sentries of the 18th North Carolina Infantry Regiment mistook Jackson and his party for a federal cavalry force, and so they fired on the party. And Jackson was hit 3 times. He was hit by 3 bullets, and he died 8 days later on the 10th of May 1863 of complications of pneumonia. And of course it was a Sunday, and Jackson said that his wish was fulfilled because he always wanted to die on a Sunday. And his last words were, "Let us cross over the river and rest under the shade of the trees." General Lee, of course, in hearing of Jackson being injured, said to Jackson's chaplain, he says, "Give General Jackson my affectionate regards and say to him, he has lost his left arm, but I my right." Lee wrote to his own wife and said, "I know not how to replace him. God's will be done." Of course, Jackson was a staunch Presbyterian. He had come to faith in Christ early in his life, and he joined the Lexington Presbyterian Church in 1851. And he started a Sunday school for slaves in 1855. And Jackson also collected alms for his church and was systematic in tithing. And he was also a strict Sabbatarian. Now, if you don't know what a Sabbatarian is, it's someone who sticks to the Sabbath day religiously. And he was actually elected deacon in the church in 1857. And praying to Jackson was as common as breathing. Both Stonewall Jackson and Robert E. Lee actually encouraged the 1863 revival that broke out amongst the Army of Northern Virginia in early 1863. And according to the Confederate chaplain, J. William Jones, by the end of the war, 150,000 Confederate soldiers had converted to Christ. Now, Jackson was a great-grandson of John Jackson and Elizabeth Cummings. And John was an Irish Presbyterian who at the age of 33, some say emigrated, but he was actually transported to America in 1748. I'll talk about that a wee bit later. And he settled in Maryland, and then he put his roots down in the Shenandoah Valley in Virginia, which is now Western Virginia. And John Jackson's family had been lowland Presbyterian Scots who had settled in the north of Ireland in the 17th century during the Scottish plantation. And they defended Londonderry during the siege of 1688 to 1689 during the Williamite Wars in Ireland. You can see that lovely wee house. This is more modern. It's nothing to do with Jackson, but it's quite nice. As I say, this is private ground, so make sure that if you're coming to see the wall that you ask permission. And there are varying claims as to where John was born exactly. And one such claim is the Birches near Portadown. I'm going to try and pronounce the area, Tartaracken area of County Armagh. It's close to the shores of Lough Neagh, and it's in the centre of Ulster. And there's a plaque that commemorates Stonewall, and this is it here. It says, reputed site of the ancestral home of Thomas J. Stonewall Jackson, Confederate General, 1824 to 1863. And you can see a lovely wee garden there, memorial, which is fantastic. So it's this wall here then. This is all that's left of the ancestral house. Of course, some would say that he was born in Londonderry, some would say Coleraine, and others would say here. And you can see the wall there. Now, there's not a big lot of the house left, but this was the original house, as you can see. And the Ballinary site here, a section of the Birches, it was actually the United States Consul General in Northern Ireland on the 22nd of July 1968 who opened this plaque for General Stonewall Jackson. So fantastic to have this. As I say, a lot of confusion as to where Jackson's ancestor John Jackson was born, and some say he was here. Certainly the American consul must have thought he was here when they put that plaque up, opened that plaque for him. And you can see the side of the wall there as well. So this would have been the house here. This part here where the garden is. So fantastic to have this still. This is a real connection with Stonewall Jackson. Now, John Jackson was born 1715, some say 1719, and he died in 1801. And while living in London, John was convicted of stealing £170. He was sentenced by the judge at the Old Bailey to 7 years penal transportation. Of course, that's how he ended up in America. And Elizabeth Cummings, in an unrelated incident, had also received a similar sentence for stealing. And they were both transported, or as some would say, emigrated, on the merchant ship Lichfield, which left London in May 1749 with 150 convicts on board, including John and Elizabeth. Now, John and Elizabeth met on board, and of course they fell in love, and they arrived in Maryland, and the couple actually married in 1755. And John and his two sons actually fought in the American Revolution. That's the American War for Independence. It was from 1765 to 1791. And John finished the war actually as a captain. Now, they had 8 children, John and Elizabeth, and their second son was Edward. Edward's third son was Jonathan, and of course Jonathan was Thomas Stonewall Jackson's father. And after Jackson's death, his wife, the widow of Stonewall Jackson, Mary Anna Jackson, became known as the widow of the Confederacy. So there you go. That's the wee plaque, reputed site of the ancestral home of Thomas J. Stonewall Jackson, Confederate General, 1824 to 1863. Isn't that fantastic? And all that's left of the house is a stone wall. So I think that says it all. Absolutely amazing. So I'll give you another review of the plaque and the garden, the wee monument, and then we'll wrap this wee video up. So there you go. That's what's left of Stonewall Jackson's ancestral home. And as I say, there's connections in Londonderry and Coleraine, and some would say that that's actually the sites where he was born, but he couldn't be born in all of them. So one of them has to be the original site. But I chose this one because there's a blue plaque up on this one, so you actually have somewhere to come to remember the general. So thank you for watching. Again, if you enjoyed the channel, please like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and also share, and it means then other people can enjoy them. God bless.